Hello, I'm Kieran Devlin, CX Editor at CXN, and I'm delighted to be joined on today's show by Malte Kosub, CEO and co-founder at Parloa. Malte, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation. Hi, Kieran.
Today, we're here to dig into the obstacles preventing organisations from diving headfirst into the Agentic AI experience proper, and how these organisations can overcome those challenges to fulfil the superlative promise that Agentic AI brings. But before we explore exactly what that entails, please tell us a little about yourself, Malte, and your Parloa journey.
Yeah, so we actually started focusing on AI and customer support pretty early on, actually 2017. Back then, no one thought about AI agents as we think about them today. And back then already we saw that speech technology actually skyrocketed in quality, so the number of words that were transcribed correctly from an audio file was as good as a human could do it. So we somehow thought, hey, voice experiences will emerge to be very, very important between customers and companies. You might still know Alexa and Google Assistant from that time. We all tried them. It somehow worked, but not really. And that's when we started, right, in the old voice bot, chatbot era. So we started as a consulting company, and then in 2022, we raised our first funding round. We completely changed the product. We actually built our whole product from scratch because we saw what is coming with large language models. So we believe this is a step change, increase in quality, so we need to rethink everything. And from there on, it went pretty steep. Now we are about 600 people across the globe. We raised over $500 million, and we work for some of the biggest enterprise in the world.
Absolutely, and I think it's terrific to have this conversation with you more broadly, but specifically at this juncture of where AI is in its own journey. You know, for years now, we've asked whether AI is good enough for customer experience. I think you guys have an interesting argument that that's the wrong question. What's the single piece of evidence that's convinced you now that the bottleneck has shifted from the technology itself to organizational readiness?
So what happened over the last 2 to 3 years is that technology actually got ready to do large-scale automation, actually increase customer experience, right? The big challenge still is that a lot of companies, they are not ready for that change because you need to have the technical foundations in place, the APIs, the processes, but you also need to change how you work, right? Because you need new roles that train agents, that connect those agents to backend systems. And you will also have a converging from support, from sales, from marketing. So the organizational structure will change going forward. And that is a lot of transformation, right? We are seeing a lot of companies moving there already, but still we're seeing a lot of companies where I would say there is still a lot of room for improvement.
And I think there's really compelling Parloa research underpinning what you're saying there, that only 1% of enterprises are truly ready to deploy agentic AI at scale. What are the other 99% getting wrong? Would you say it's a failure of leadership, governance, data, culture, a mixture of all? Or are organizations still fundamentally trying to bolt AI onto processes that were never really designed for it?
I think it's a mix of all of those topics, right? Let's break it down. So the one problem is companies use the wrong kind of technology platform. They try to build it themselves. So that might be the first part that a lot of companies challenge with. The second part is they are not set up for success. I always say you need 3 things in order to drive agentic adoption, right? First is you need CEO or executive buy-in. It needs to be a clear agenda point on that. Second part, you need a clear KPI. So what is the KPI that everyone looks at where the team and the Agentic AI initiative needs to go towards? And the third part is you need a dedicated team that day in and day out thinks about driving that specific initiative forward and go to that KPI, right? If you have those 3 things, you are set up for success. And we're seeing a lot of companies, it's like a little thing that the customer support department should do or an innovative department should do, but that won't cut it. And the third part is, yes, there are a lot of companies where they still have old processes in place and they need to rethink their processes. However, there's a lot of low-hanging fruits even without changing the processes to get into a return of invest. So I think the first two are actually the biggest bottlenecks right now.
And I guess moving on to the CX specifically side of things, I think Parloa have said that customer service should stop measuring maybe outmoded metrics like call deflection and start measuring customer resolution. That is a really critical change in incentives. What does an organization actually have to change in its KPIs, I guess building on your previous answer, as well as the teams and the operating model to make that shift more than just a slogan?
So the interesting part is that the industry always talked about containment rate, right? Containment rate is actually every call that is not going to a human. But this metric is flawed, right? You can have a lot of containment, but a high amount of frustrated customers because it didn't work, they just hung up, right? So we don't believe that containment actually is the right metric. You need to look at how did the sentiment develop from when the customer called to when the customer ended the call, right? Did it go up? So was the AI agent capable of increasing and improving the sentiment, right? What was the sentiment in the end? How happy was the customer? Was the topic actually solved? So we talk about resolution rate. Containment rate is fine, but we have AI capabilities to actually look into every single conversation and say, was that initial issue solved or not? So those are the topics we need to focus on. We always say you have two parts. First, resolution rate, that needs to go up. And second, CSAT, so the happiness of the customer. And that needs to go up as well. If both things go up, you're going in the right direction. And we believe going forward, you will have a relationship score. We believe AI agents can build relationships with customers, right? Because it's always the same voice that picks up the phone, that answers a WhatsApp or a chat. And this AI agent has a lot of context of the user, right? So if you're good in building those AI agents, you build a relationship with the customer, which eventually becomes a mode for an enterprise. But that relationship score will be a very important metric going forward for an enterprise.
And you mentioned earlier, speaking of enterprises, you have collaborated with some of the biggest enterprises in the world. You've got Allianz, Decathlon, TUI. Without obviously revealing anything confidential, what would you say is the clearest pattern among these companies that have successfully moved AI from pilot to efficient production? And what is the most common mistake that keeps everyone else stuck?
Yeah, and they are coming back to what I shared a couple of minutes ago, right? We always believe it's those three parts: having executive buy-in, having a clear KPI, and a team. And the companies that work with us, they always focus on those three things because we're also trying to get them to that part. And that is a clear correlation between the companies that clearly execute on those three things and those that are not. And maybe there's one additional mistake that can be made. A lot of companies we're seeing left, right, and center, they try to do short pilots and they pick a very, very, very complicated use case, right? And then it takes longer than they initially thought. So being very mindful of what is the use case. Is the use case ready for agentic AI, or are the backends and processes actually not ready? So picking the right use case to show positive return on investment fast, I think is very crucial.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's just that proof of concept before you get ahead of your skis, as it were. One final question before I let you go, Malte. If we sat down in 12 months' time, what would convince you that CX has authentically entered the agentic AI era? What tangible, practical changes would customers actually notice? And what would it tell you the industry is still falling short?
So if we look at customer support right now, 97% of companies still use old touchtone IVR or old technology, right? So we are at the beginning of this agentic journey. So What happens right now still that a lot of users, if they call and there is an AI agent or a bot, they think it's a bad experience because they think it's old technology, right? And I think if in a year, if we get a lot of feedback from customers that actually calling a company and solving a problem with an AI agent actually solves their problem, and it's a experience that actually works and is working better than waiting for a human in line for 10 minutes and then are being connected to the wrong human again and again and again. So moving from this 97 to 80, 70% that still use old technology, that would show significant progress. And then the next year we are lower and lower and lower, so that we're getting rid of this old technology that just creates friction and very bad customer experience.
No, I think that's a terrific way of doing it. Is this gradual, incremental, steadily measured process? That's terrific. Well, that is it for this week. So a massive thank you for Malte for your time today.
Thanks, Kieran.
And if you enjoyed this video and would like more key insights in entertainment, please like, share, and subscribe to CXM. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.